It's showtime,
Yes.
is what it says. You are live. That's always fun.
Is that what it says up there? Showtime.
It's
I like
showtime. So welcome in, everybody, to this live stream the day after the final preseason game. Congratulations, you made it.
Yeah.
You made it through fake football. That is every single year. I feel like you forget how annoying it is to get through the preseason, and then you're like, oh my god. What I'm most looking forward to on next whatever a week from Thursday for the first football game is that we'll have real football to react to. Now everybody's going to overreact to whatever happens in that Chiefs Lions game, right? Like that's going to be dominating all of our talk until Sunday comes around and we get a full slate. So let's just say that the Chiefs come out and they win by like 3 touchdowns. There's going to be this like, oh, we overhyped the Lions. The Lions are no good. And then there's going to be the think pieces say, well, actually, they look pretty good here, if not for this 1 or 2 things, right? And then like you're just going to get, 72 hours of discourse about Chiefs, Lions, and overreaction to that one game. But it's better than overreacting to preseason football because this has been really annoying and has just been going on too long.
Well, the Bears went undefeated last preseason. It's meaningless. They're 1-2 this preseason. It's meaningless. I mean, there's a lot of people that put a lot of stock and they get really anxious and hyped up over things they see or things they don't see in preseason. It's like, it's practice. I mean, they're not really trying nothing. They don't scheme. There is no game plan. It's just pretty much, here's some stuff we want to see. We want to get this guy in and out of here quickly. It's just basically just to get the players in the game day mode. That's really all it is. I mean, they get more work out of those joint practices because it's actually schemed up stuff. They're actually working on specific things, but we're talking about practice. It's like, come on, and
do you see the I think it might have been McAfee. I can't remember. I saw it on Twitter, but it was with Jeff Fisher, an interview with Jeff Fisher. And he talked about how he was talking to Mike Shanahan before a preseason game. And they were just kind of like, basically like the terms of engagement with which they were going to, and they were like, yeah, we're going to, I want to work on this. We're going to get 25 runs in, we're going to try to get this sub package in at some point, like just kind of sharing with each other. And like, they said, like, no motion, like, no, let's not mess around with that, whatever. And then he's like, it's in the end of the game. They come down and they're trying to score a touchdown. They score a touchdown to tie, it's either tie it up with an extra point and like, obviously you're not going to do that. So, they came out in this heavy package and they shift with motion from a weak formation to a strong formation, and they take it into a 2-point conversion and they win the game. And he's like, so, he did that, whatever. I didn't think much of it. And then Mike Shanahan calls me the next day and apologizes for using motion because, he like violated the terms of engagement in this preseason game. And I thought that's so fascinating, right? Because these coaches know like what they're trying. Hey, we're just trying, let's get out of here healthy. We're trying to work on this stuff. What are you trying to work on? Okay. I get it. There's kind of a friendliness to it because it's not real. It's a glorified practice. They want to make sure that they get out healthy. It was the green light, the Chris Long podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
It was. I like that, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not to give other podcasts that you guys should listen to, but he's really good. Chris Long's really good. Kyle's okay, but like Chris Long's really, really engaging and really good. And you get a lot of interesting guests on that show. So
yeah, it's fun hearing that one. And then the Kelsey brothers, they have a show I've caught every now and again. It's there's a lot of neat podcasts out there. It's like 10 years ago, I never would have imagined the podcast thing would be like a thing. I mean, it was looked at like the same with blogging. Oh, you're a blogger, you're a podcaster. Well, that's media now, man. That's what it is. That's where people go for their news. I mean, news is actually broken on a lot of these shows and a lot of these podcasts. I mean, there's a lot of them, even though we aren't credentialed us here, but I think we do a lot of good work for the stuff we do. And it's all media. It's all the same. Same with social media. It's all the same. It's all content, and that's what sports fans want.
Absolutely. You've shared everything out. Are you ready to?
I'm ready to rock, man. Let's do this.
All right. So we're going to record a podcast for those of you joining us for the first time. We record this podcast. It's released on all of your, podcast apps and everything where you get podcasts. you should still probably download that podcast. That would help us out. But
Of course.
we love it that you're joining us here live, or you're joining us here afterwards, watching it on our YouTube home at Second City Gridiron. And then at the end, we go through and we take comments and questions, and we talk about that. So that's kind of our format. So I'm gonna kick off the podcast here, and we will get going.
Let's do it.
Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, we did it. We made it through the preseason. No giant injuries occurring in the third preseason game that I know of yet. So relatively unscathed through this preseason. What about you? Are you unscathed through this preseason? Did you make it through healthy?
I made it through. I mean, I look at preseason the same way every year. It's just practice games. It's, don't get too high, don't get too low. Let things play out, because once week one comes, it all changes. And I guess technically we are in Packers week right now. It's official.
Ooh,
I mean, it's
double
2
week.
weeks, but it's Packard week times 2, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say I suffered from whiplash from all of the preseason takes that people were having, like coming back and forth on this guy is terrible, needs to be cut. This guy needs to be elevated to starter, right? Like all of the takes all over the place. I'm so happy to be done with preseason. It is exhausting every single year. It's fun to see some of the younger guys get reps that are, those bubble guys that are trying to make the team. That's really what the preseason is about in a lot of ways, getting guys back up to game day strength and health and all that, but also trying to see who are going to be that 35th through 53rd guys on the roster, right? And then who's going to fill out that practice squad. That's kind of fun to see. I like that every year, but some of the takes that come out of this time of year are just exhausting for me.
Yeah, practice, all it is. No big deal. Let's have fun.
All right. So on this show, we start off in the trenches every week. And so let's start with trench tribute. And you can do this for this game or for the preseason overall categories. Kind of wrapping up the preseason here as we head into the regular season. So I'm going to start with you. Trench tribute from this game or the preseason. Who did you have?
I'm going to go this game. Plus, he did have a nice preseason. And it is a rookie 7th round defensive tackle, Travis Bell. I went through and rewatched the game. I'm always focusing on the trenches, because when you watch live, your eyes tend to follow the ball. It's hard to really focus. And man, Travis Bell, man, the whole preseason, he hustles. You can see why Ryan Poles really likes this guy in the draft, why he talks so highly of him in his press conference. He fits the hits philosophy to a T. Nonstop motor, real good hand use. He has pretty good get off. He's pretty powerful at the point of attack. I mean, he's still raw. Some of his technique, he gets a little high at times, but this is going to be a tough cut if the Bears decide to cut him. 7th round draft pick. Those guys don't always make the team. It's kind of hit or miss. Is there a place for him on the final roster? If they go 5 defensive tackles, maybe. If they go 4, obviously he's the odd man out. But I like what I saw of Travis Bell. I think one way or the other, the Bears are going to bring him back to the practice squad if he is let go. But I like Travis Bell.
You don't think that he showed enough during his reps to entice another team to try to pull him on? I mean, you're talking about a defensive tackle here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams probably have a guy like that. I mean, like you say, it's a risk, but do you think he showed something at a elevated level that might entice somebody to have another team put him on their active 53?
Yeah, that's the key. You said it. They got to be active 53. You can't just claim him to stash him on your practice squad. If you claim him, he's got to make your 53-man roster, for the season here. So I'm not sure. Small school guy, like I said, he's kind of raw. He's more nose tackle. So, how many teams are looking for that kind of guy? He's not really nose tackle in a 3-4. He doesn't have that kind of bulk to him. He's more nose tackle in a 4-3 defense, a 4-man front. So it's got to be a scheme fit for him. It's got to be a team that, like I said, is gonna put him on the roster. And I can't see him getting meaningful snaps early in his career. So we go through this every year as Bears fans. Oh, they can't cut this guy. They'll lose him. And 99% of those guys always make it back to the practice squad. And then some guys the Bears don't even want, because they have other guys they bring to the practice squad that takes this guy's place. But I do like the upside of Travis Bell. I hope he sticks around, because he'll be a guy I'll be rooting for.
Yeah, I agree. And one of those culture guys too, like that's why they drafted him with the 7th round pick. There's a lot of people like, why wouldn't you just sign him as a undrafted free agent? I think Ryan Poles uses those picks in certain ways, and this is one of those ways where you're like, I really like this guy. I want to make sure we get him. I want to reward him for being the person he is, that he can say he was drafted, right?
Yep.
Stories like that, or if you read history of the NFL, people are drafted for all kinds of reasons, right? This is a pretty good reason, is to say, we really like you, we believe in you, we want like to reward you with that sort of feather in your cap. And he's shown with his work ethic and his hustle that exactly what Ryan Poles saw in him. So that's great. I also want to just add that you can't really sign a guy to your 53 and then like cut him the next week and try to hide him on your practice squad. Like the Bears would be able to kind of revert back to that. There's some rules around, I think, how you stick with that. Like you have to keep them on so many weeks. So they do have some protections in place for teams to not lose guys that way if they're just going to like cut them back into the practice squad. But my guy, this is the guy that I didn't know much about. We've talked about him a lot on the show the last few weeks, but my eyes are going to him now because we keep talking about him. And I'm going to say Terrell Lewis. This is the guy to me that I knew really nothing about coming into the year. I think the first practice, we talked about him on the bus over to practice.
We did, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, sure, I'll watch him. Like I don't even know who he is, but we'll find him and we'll watch him. And since then, he's shown that like, hey, this guy's got some juice, and to the point where we're having some very interesting conversations about what we could maybe see in this defensive line rotation here. And so that's actually going to lead me into my tweet. So I'm gonna kick off tweets this week with our friend PFF Brad. He talking about Travis Gibson. Travis Gibson leads all defenders with 12 pressures and 9 quarterback hurries. Among edge rushers, edge defenders, Gibson's 23.9% pass rush win rate. Oh my. Can you say that fast? Pass rush win rate.
There it is.
And it breaks 7th. And then his 26% pressure rate ranks 5th in the preseason, right? So he took it down to rate because he's playing a lot of reps. He's playing deeper into games, so he's playing against backup tackles. He's playing against third string tackles. So you would expect those numbers to be pretty good. He used it as a rate so that he could bring it down to other guys, so you could compare apples to apples and not just him having so many reps, right? But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we heard some things reported before the game that Travis Gibson has asked to be traded, which is probably a likelihood that he's either not happy with the number of reps he's gotten, or he's maybe gotten an indication that he's going to be on the chopping block.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of lead this into this conversation here to talk about both Lewis and Gibson and where the state of this edge defender is.
Yeah, I think it's Lewis right now. I mean, it looks like he's the guy the Bears have given him the reps ahead of Travis Gibson, and the Travis Gibson story did break during the game, which is kind of odd. And after the game, Coach Flus, didn't really address it. He just kind of said, he likes Travis Gibson. He thinks he's a part of the roster, the typical coach speak. But our guy, Greg Gabriel, I don't know if you caught it, but he literally just tweeted like a half hour before we went live that he originally thought that this whole Travis Gibson story was BS. But Greg said he talked to someone, and it's a pretty good source. And so now Greg flipped his script, and he says it's true that there is a trade request out there. And, we'll see. Like you said, I think part of it is Gibson saw the writing on the wall. He's running with the 3s and the 4s. He realizes his time in Chicago probably is over. So why not try and see if you can get a request to go where you can kind of decide where you want to go with the trade. I'm not sure how much value is there on a guy like Travis Gibson. I mean, the Bears used a 5th-round pick on him a couple years ago, 3 years ago. They're not going to get that back. If anything, maybe a 7th round with maybe some conditions put on it. I'm not sure what they're going to get for Travis Gibson, but I like Travis Gibson. I think he is still an ascending player. What he's doing this year in preseason is against guys who probably will not be in the league this year. So it's hard to really to know who he is, what he is. But, 2 years ago, he was looked really good, looked like an up-and-comer. Last year, he kind of fell back as in his new position there with his hand in the dirt. So I don't know, man. I could see it go either way with the Bears. Maybe they keep him because of what he did. Maybe they try and move him. And if not, at the end of the day, this is not a Ryan Poles guy. This is a Ryan Pace draft pick. So maybe Ryan Pace over in Atlanta will throw a pick and or bring his guy back home, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the best you're going to get is probably a pick swap, right? Where you
Yeah.
have, somebody sends you a fifth and you give them a sixth, like that, pick swap being that way, or some kind of future compensation where there's a protection of like, we're going to flip these picks of whoever gets the highest one or something like that. But it's not going to be as much as Bears fans think. I get that. It just is what it is. Our friend Jonathan Wood has done some interesting work in terms of looking at what Gibson was able to do basically as the second rusher on the team when Robert Quinn was still here, even though Quinn wasn't producing all that much when he was in Chicago either last year. But he looked at it pre and post Quinn trade. And during the time when he was the second rusher with Quinn on the field, his numbers were much better. And once Quinn was traded, he just basically disappeared, which is, I think, what everybody remembers about Gibson's season last year was that he was just basically a non-factor. So that, I think, is, a lot of us are like, yeah, he was pretty bad last year, right? But is he bad enough where you just cut him off the roster and just move on with not a big deal? Or do you say like, well, he was just playing at he was at a level that was a little higher than what his skill set is, right? He's not a number one. We talked about that a ton last year about that defensive line, right? So he's not a defensive end one. He can't do that. You don't need him to do that. You've got Yannick Ngakoue here. You've got a couple other guys that are probably higher in the pecking order. He can come in and he can be the third or fourth rusher, and that's fine, right? So do you really want to trade that away for low compensation? I don't know, but if he's not in your plans and you're going to cut him anyway, and you can get something for him, then yeah, I think you move on.
If it was me, I think I'd keep him. You can never have enough guys to come off the edge. I think, like you said, with better talent around him, he may be better this year. But I could see how the Bears want to go if they want to just go their own way.
Yep. Okay. What about you? What's your tweet this week?
My tweet's from our guy, Jacob Infante at Jacob Infante 24. Bears cornerback Tyreek Stevenson allowed 6 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown on 7 targets per Pro Football Focus in the last game. His one forced incompletion was his interception. Not the most consistent day for the rookie, though a lot of first-year corners go through growing pains. And we've talked about this even last year. Kyler Gordon was not a very good football player early on. Corners struggle. It's just what happens. He has to learn how to play, the NFL game. I mean, he's a bit handsy right now. He's too physical. He doesn't know what he can get away with and what he can't get away with. Stevenson's going to struggle. He's going to start for the Bears out of the gate. Week 1, he's the guy opposite Jalen Johnson, but he is going to struggle just like Kyler Gordon struggled last year. At some point, it'll click for him. The game will slow down a little bit. He'll understand his scheme, his responsibility a little better. But he's going to struggle. That's just what happens with rookie corner. So as Bears fans, let's not get too worried if Stevenson's giving up touchdowns, because opposing quarterbacks are going to go after him. They're not going to go after Jalen Johnson, who's more established. They may stay away from the slot a little bit more because Kyler Gordon has had a great camp, great preseason. He looks like he's a ascending talent as well. They're going to target Stevenson. He's going to get burned. It'll happen.
Yeah, this is got to be a goldfish. The corners more than anybody, they got to be goldfish. They got to have a short-term memory, and I think he's shown that so far. And I think he's shown that he's a fighter and that he's willing to do that. Did that in this game, right? I mean, that's just and again, that's what good corners do. Like you said, Gordon was not good to start the year. People freaked out.
Yeah,
not on this show because we set the expectation, I think, correctly for what corners can do. Right? I freak out a little bit if I see a running back that can't do anything early on in their career, because they should be able to step in and at least run the football, because that's the basics of the position. It doesn't really change where you're at, is how to run the ball. But corner takes a really long time. Tight ends, really hard for a tight end to come in and play really well out of the gate. It just doesn't really happen, right? So yeah, and given the strength of the secondary, like if Gordon comes on and he's the plus player that we think that he can be with that athleticism, and we know that Jalen Johnson's a good corner. You've got 2 safeties that we like, right? He could get an insane number of targets, right? And to the point where you may have the defense really help him with a safety that kind of acts as a caddy over the top. So that's something to think about too. But I don't know. I kind of like him. Like he's got that attitude. He's got that Miami corner attitude. And he's coming in with that mentality that he's not gonna be pushed around. He's gonna get back up and he's gonna fight the next route.
Did you see his quote after the game? He was talking about how he had to prove that he can catch the ball. He had said something about how snakes with no hands, they still have to catch. I don't know. It was a really odd quote when I heard it, but it was like, okay, I don't know what he was getting at, but I like it. It was kind of interesting.
No, I didn't catch that. It sounds confusing. It's like the meme that's out there about the different position groups and how they talk. Quarterbacks will say things in certain ways, and wide receivers are very diva and how they talk. Right? Maybe it's very cryptic of how a corner talks. They talk in very weird terms. I don't know. We'll move on. We'll hit up our stat of the week. Caught up in a numbers game. What number stood out to you this week?
I'm looking more big picture. I got two numbers. My numbers are 1 and the number 4. 1 is the position the Bears hold in the waiver wire priority right now, based on their horrible record last year, and they're going to hold that top spot until week 4. So basically, a day after the week 3 games, and the waiver wire priority list will now reshuffle every week going forward. So the Bears have almost a week or almost a month now where anyone cut, they get first crack at those guys. And I'm talking about cut, I should say waived, because that's the guys that have less than 4 years accrued service in the league. Those guys go through waivers. Vested veterans who have 4 or more seasons in the league, they do not go through waivers until after the trade deadline. But hopefully by then the Bears aren't still picking so high in the waiver order, because they'll have a much better record this year.
That's a really good point to make, because I think a lot of people think anybody that's cut, they go on the waiver wire, and that's not true. So some of those guys, a lot of the household names that if those guys get cut, those guys immediately become free agents and they're free to sign with whomever they want. So, I don't have a good example, but let's just say, a center gets cut that, that you're like, oh, he's a name brand, but like a rookie came on and kind of took a spot, and this team's just trying to save money. The Bears should claim him. And it's like, well, no, the Bears should call him and they should fly him directly to Hallis Hall and
throw a ton of money at him
and throw, hey, what was it, that number you wanted? How about I add a little bit to that, and let's get this contract signed? Because like we talked about in the offseason, I think signing a center would have been a good idea, and we are already seeing that as being a potential issue. So my number, and I'm sorry if I'm becoming a little bit of a caricature of myself, but I haven't talked much about him all preseason, but here was my time.
It is
52.4 was the average of Trenton Gill's 5 punts yesterday. That's a monster number. Yeah. This guy has added when I went through and I charted his punts last year, which those of you new to this program, that is something I did. I charted his punts to try to figure out kind of how he was doing and where he was at, and I thought he looked pretty good. As a rookie, he was kind of in the middle of the league as an average punter, which I think is a nice result. And my thinking was, if he could get a year in and work a little bit on strength, get into that strength and conditioning program, which even helps punters, then maybe he could take a step up. I think we're seeing it, because he's adding distance to these kicks. I like to listen to the radio broadcast. No offense to the guys that call the preseason games for the Bears, but the radio guys are more fun for me. I like listening to Joniak, and he called it another rocket. He called off of Gill's leg. And again, I think some people don't care about punting, and that's fine. I get it. But it can make a legitimate difference in a game. If you're, adding another 10 yards to your punt, that's another first down that team has to get on the next drive. And if you're able to place balls inside of the 10, those drives have a much lower points expectation associated with them. And so a punter can really be a great defender. They can really drive down the work that your defense has to do if they're able to do that. And I think he's headed in the right direction. And I think it's something that we should just know and praise, that the guillotine is alive and well.
The guillotine. Yeah, he had a nice game. He's really coming into his own too. I mean, last year he was kind of reserved. He was a draft pick, and I don't know if you remember when the Bears had their draft picks, their social media thing
Oh
where they're all
yeah,
saying
sure.
hello. He comes on towards the end because he was a late draft pick, and everyone else has like this
Doing
very dramatic,
push-ups.
yeah, all exciting, and he's just, hi guys, I'm Trenton Gill.
Really excited to be a Chicago Bear,
And
right?
then now this year, he's on social media more. He's a lot more outgoing. His personality's coming through, and I think he's becoming a fan favorite. I mean, Bears fans always love their punters or long snappers. That's just kind of how it is. It's like we like those niche guys, and that's Trenton Gill. I mean, he's got a nickname, man, the guillotine. It's cool.
Now, when we came up with the guillotine, it was because of that very conservative demeanor, like
Yeah,
he was, very quiet, and you had kind of that opposite, right? Where
yeah,
it's like a really big guy and you call him tiny, or a really sweet dog, you call it killer or something like that, right? This kind of opposite effect. But he's kind of coming into it, and he did see the shirt online and he liked it. So, yeah, he's embodying the guillotine. I love it. All right. So we're talking Fields report. I think we can talk the entire preseason and kind of expectations, but I also want to talk about the other quarterbacks and maybe where that pecking order is at. So not much to talk about with Justin Fields in this game. 2 of 6 for 51 yards. Most of that came on a pass to DJ Moore, where the Bills decided that they didn't really want to tackle him, so he was able to spin out and gain some extra yardage. So not much going in that, and then he took a little bit of a pop on a screenplay, and they said, "Hey, you know what? I think we're good. We're gonna bring in the rookie here to finish off this drive." So let's stop and talk about Fields first. Anything from this game or overall preseason where he just didn't play much?
Yeah, I mean, he had like I said, the first week it was all about the yak. It was just 3 nice quick screen passes. That was nice. This game, they asked him to do a little bit more, went downfield a little bit. That pass to DJ Moore, it was a little low. They talked about it then brought in the broadcast. But when I first saw it, I thought it was a nice throw because DJ Moore kind of set down in the zone, and Fields had to put that ball a little bit to his left to make sure that the defender that was between the two didn't have a good chance at it. So I thought it was a nice throw. Should have been a little higher, obviously, but Moore is a good player. Moore picked up more yak on that stuff because that's kind of what he does. So we didn't see a lot from Fields, but we saw a little bit of the scramble ability from him. I think he had 3 rushes, 15-ish yards. I want to see him get down in preseason. Stop trying to do what you're doing there, but this is a guy that has now weapons. If the O-line is healthy, like Coach Flus says, it should mostly be by week 1. We'll see that in front of him as well. I'm excited, man. I've been excited all offseason for Justin Fields, seeing what he's going to do against the Packers. It should be fun.
Yeah, I think sometimes that rocket of an arm, he needs to maybe learn to put a little touch on the ball, right? That ball to Herbert
Seemed a little high.
right.
Hard.
It's
Yeah.
right in front of the line of scrimmage, right? And he's whipping it, So at some point, I think he probably could back off a little bit on that. Again, we're talking about 6 pass attempts, and I don't want to get too much. Probably a little late on the throw to Kmet. That's probably why it was incomplete. But I'm not worried about it. Six attempts. Let's move on there. Let's talk about the other 2 quarterbacks. So Tyson Bagent was 7 of 14 for 43 yards, no touchdowns and interception. He did have a ball to Daniel Carlson in the end zone. Was a drop, not a perfect ball, wide open receiver there. Not a perfect ball, but probably one that's caught by a professional wide receiver most of the time, right? Like that's a ball that you expect to be caught. The very next play, he throws a bad pick, right? And then I think overall he looked a little bit more. He looks kind of comfortable in maneuvering the pocket, but also looked a little jumpy, right? Like he jumped to run the ball pretty quick yesterday. I felt like he kind of came back down to earth a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more of what you'd expect to see as a rookie. He does look like he can play, but I didn't think that he was this like, oh, gee, this is a no doubt kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I mean, he had some moments, obviously, in the game, 7 of 14. The touchdown should have been a touchdown. It wasn't. I mean, these things happen as preseason, but Tyson Bagent, man, it's a great story. Undrafted free agent, threw a ton of passes through in college and high school. Going back to his times in Pee Wee as well. Longtime quarterback. These guys just kind of know how to play the game, and we're seeing that. I've had him as a roster lock here for a few weeks here. I don't think he's the QB2. I think they're still going to go with P.J. Walker if something happens in a game week 1 against the Packers. I think it's going to be Walker. But Bajan's there, man. He's going to be a guy for this team, and we've talked about how important it is to have a guy that you brought in, you draft, you develop, because it's cost controlled, man. It's a guy that you trust, and you don't have to go out and spend a ton of money on backups every year because you have a guy that you believe in, sitting behind your QB1.
What did you think of the quote from PJ Walker, which was something to the effect of somebody asked him, do you feel like you're in a competition for QB2 or something like that? Or is that just still your job? And he said something like, I can read the room.
Yeah.
What'd you make of that?
I mean, he knows it. I mean, I'm sure that the coach's staff had talked about it behind the scenes. I mean, even Coach Lewis talked about when he asked him in the press conference a week ago, is the quarterback 2 job open? And he said, hey, everything's open. And Tyson Bagent's play is why that became an actual competition, because he just looked good in practice. He looked good in the games, and PJ Walker hasn't. He sees it. He's a pro. I mean, he's been around a while. He's bounced around the NFL, bounced around the XFL. He's been trying to get, establish himself as a quarterback for a long time. So he understands the game. He sees what's happening here. Tyson Bagent is taking advantage of his opportunity. And I think, like I said, I think Walker's still your 2 because you don't want to throw a rookie out there in a game. But with the emergency QB rule, I think you're going to see Bagent active every week as the 3rd quarterback.
Yep, I agree. I think that's the way that they'll go. And it's one of those years where you do wish that they could have 56 roster spots, right? And it's just not doesn't happen. It'll be very interesting to see who those last few guys are that kind of they cut, or do they have to IR somebody to try to bring people back? It'd be interesting to see exactly how they're going to do this. So, all right, Lester, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this, we are going to get into everybody's favorite category, the 3 Bears. Stick with us. All right, 3 Bears, hot bowl of porridge, cold bowl of porridge, and the just right. Who did you have for your hot bowl of porridge this week or for the preseason overall?
He's a veteran that I wasn't really expecting to do much this preseason. He's been around the Bears off and on, practice squad up and down every now and again. That's Simba Webster. Yeah. 3 catches, 37 yards, 2 runs off jet sweeps for 22 yards. Plus, he made the tackle on the Bagent interception with his hustle there. So Simba Webster, man, he kind of just a guy that kind of hangs around. I think he's 27, 28 years old. He's bounced around the league quite a bit. He's found a home here in the Bears as far as being a practice squad guy. I don't think he makes the roster. I think he's another practice squad candidate this season, but he's a good veteran to have around because he can return punts for you if you have to. He can cover punts for you and play special teams, and cover kicks. And now here he is making plays as a receiver. So I thought at this point in his career, he may be kind of winding things down, and some of the young guys would kind of step up and push him off the bubble. But Simba Webster is still doing his thing in the NFL, and there's a place for him. It may not be on a 53, but he's a guy that's definitely going to have a paycheck in 2023.
Well, it's always NFL is in many ways an attrition league, right? Because it's a violent game. You're going to get guys that are going to be injured. You're going to shut down guys for injuries or nagging injuries at some point, depending on where you're at in the season. And so, every year you see these guys that are playing in the final month of the year throughout the league that you're like, oh yeah, I remember them from the preseason, right? So even if these guys that don't make the Bears 53-man roster, they may stick around the Bears practice squad. They may go somebody else's practice squad, but eventually they may get that chance later on in the year to fill those roles, in the last few games. And so a guy like that who really is kind of this, he's got some special teams value, you can kind of plug him in. That there's a role for that in the league. It's not, he's never going to make, the most money or anything like that. But it's an interesting story because I remember seeing him. I was like, oh, he's still here. Okay, that's interesting. And then, just kind of like, okay, well, he's a cut, and then he has a much more impressive camp and preseason than I remember him the previous year. And it's like, well, hey, he's making it more difficult, or he's finding himself a role in this league, which I think is great. So good for him. I like that pick. I went a little younger. I went with the rookie Tyler Scott, particularly in this game, had that 56-yard kick return, showed that juice. Interesting that he made the move he made, right? Like it looked like he tried to just take the edge and try to go outside like most kick returners would, he may have had a chance to score or at least get another like 20 yards. He kind of zigged when everybody thought he'd zag, and he got tripped up by the kicker or by the player that was right behind him. I don't know who actually made the contact that tripped him up, but it was kind of interesting to see that happen, because it looked like it could have been 6 there. But if he's got some juice, and I don't know how much he's going to play on offense, right? And then they had him field punts, which I don't think he really returned any, but he was able to field them.
2 fair catches, yeah.
Right. So if he can show the value as a returner, that could be interesting for other players on this roster. So I would have loved to have seen him have an actual punt returner too, but if he can at least catch the ball, that's what Dante Pettis was doing. And they cut him. So I don't know. I thought I like to see the juice out of Tyler Scott.
And we talked about it last week. The bar for the Bears as a returner in the punt game is catch it. And that's what Dante Pettis did for you. He's a guy that could catch it. Then, of course, he goes on IR with, I'm not sure what happened to him, but, he's done for the year. He's no longer going to be in the mix here. You talked about Tyler Scott maybe pushing a guy off the roster, like a guy like Velus Jones. Velus Jones has struggled as a punt returner. They love him as a kick returner, but if that's your one gig, I mean, that's not really a adding value to a roster spot in the National Football League. So Tyler Scott may knock Velus Jones, who was Ryan Poles' first, offensive draft pick ever, might knock him off the roster. And I would not be surprised to see that happen. Velus Jones hasn't played, so who knows what his injury is? Maybe they roster him for the first 53, and then they put him on IR immediately with whatever his ailment could be. That way they give him give Tyler Scott more opportunities for 4 weeks, and they say, okay, Tyler Scott can definitely do kick and punt return duties. Velus Jones, sorry, but you're done now.
That'll be interesting, and all those roster rules and how they finagle that stuff is really interesting to see what'll happen here. So, what about Colt? Flip it around the other side. Who are you calling out for maybe not having a very good game or camp?
For my cold, I'm going to go with a position here, and that is the center position for the Chicago Bears. Did Sam Mustipher on his way out of town put a curse on the position? Because Cody Whitehair has a bad snapping hand. He played guard, but he isn't able to snap. Lucas Patrick, who's supposed to be the backup center, he has an injury. He was injured early in camp. He came back. Then he was out again. Was there a setback? Of course, Coach Eberflus isn't going to, get any specifics until he has to. And then now Doug Kramer, who was starting at center for you his last game. He was seen after the game with a cast on his snapping hand and wrist. Dieter Iceland is your last center standing. And I am not confident in Dieter Iceland. Although I do like when Iceland's up there, he's got the finger wiggle going on like Krutz did back in the day. So he looks like he's ready to go, but he's just not the best football player at this point for the Bears. They need more quality at center, which is where the waiver wire will come into play, possibly some late cuts, free agents come back into play. So center position, man, it's brutal right now for the Bears.
The hand shake,
twitchy,
for your offhand as a center is an elite move. Yeah, that's absolutely a good call by you. I had a meme last year, and those of you that participate in these meme creations, rarely do I do this, but I was motivated to do this last year, and it was the Grim Reaper with going to door, and there's like blood on the first door, blood on the second door, and he's knocking on the third door. And the first door I put Lucas Patrick's name, second door I put Doug Kramer's name because those guys were hurt. And then the third door, I said like rookie 2023 center because I was convinced we were going to draft somebody. And this is like Sam Mustipher, man, like he's inevitable. He's going to keep doing this to all these guys. Yeah, I think he did. I think he left the voodoo curse on the center position on his way out of town. And these guys just can't stay healthy. They can't get a guy in here that can take snaps consistently for the Bears. So great call there. Something we've talked about a lot on this show, and something I've talked about a lot over the last couple of years is my obsession with rookie center class, because I want the Bears to bring somebody in to stabilize that position. And, a lot of people will say, well, you can find centers anywhere. Stop. Like maybe, but tell me how the Bears can do this soon, because this they're going to need to invest some draft capital in this, or they're going to need to invest some of that free agent money in this soon because they need this position stabilized. Obviously, Cody Whitehair is not the long-term answer. So, all right, mine. I have position group as well. I have rush defense. So the front four as rush defense. So again, Buffalo is a team that is built to win the Super Bowl this year. I think a lot of people are maybe a little bit, they're somehow underrated right now in the NFL media because we want to know the hot new thing. We want to have that pick out there that we want to be first. We want to talk about the teams that maybe no one's talking about because they're on the rise. That's every year you get that. This team had one of the crazier years with the snowstorms, and obviously with the Damar Hamlin injury and incident, and just all of the things that happened around this team. And by the time they got to the playoffs, they were running on fumes, right?
Yeah.
But let's reset here. This team is really freaking good. So I want to make sure that we understand that I know this wasn't just the Colts or something, but 34 carries for 173 yards, 5.1 yards per carry. They just ran the ball at will on the Bears all day. It just didn't matter. They could get chunk yardage anytime they wanted to run the ball. And last year, the Bears were really bad at stopping the run. So, is this going to be a continuous issue here? Because if you get punched in the mouth every week, it doesn't really matter how good your back seven is. If they can just get 5 yards a carry, the Bears are going to get run off the field.
A lot of stuff that the Bears expect their front seven to do is its gap integrity. And possibly with all the changing bodies during preseason, it's hard for them to kind of really hone in on what everyone's supposed to be doing. Hopefully it cleans up a bit, once the season starts and you got your starting seven, up front there. They know what their responsibility is. They know which gap they have. But like you said, right now it looks a little loose. The Bears spent a ton of capital and money in that front. Rasheem Green is a guy they signed as a guy that's good against the run. He's maybe a roster bubble. DeMarcus Walker, we haven't seen play. He's good against the run. Andrew Billings, big nose tackle, good against the run. Let's see how they look once the season starts. Let's see how they look once they have T.J. Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, whether it's Sanborn or Sewell. Sewell got a little dinged up. We'll see how his injury is. But once they have their front seven intact and they all understand, okay, this is my gap. This is my gap on this play. Okay, this happened. Now I have this gap. Let's see how they go there. But right now, like you said, the run defense does not look good this preseason.
I hope they fix it because that's frustrating. Watching your team just get run on is somehow more getting than having it get passed on. I don't know why.
And then for the Bills, it was former Bear Darrington Evans who got like 60-some yards against them. It was like, I liked Evans, when he was here. I thought he was a good player. I would not have been surprised if they wanted to bring him back, but good for him. He's still bouncing around the league. He's going to have a role there in Buffalo, probably.
A good team to have a role with.
Exactly.
All right. What about just right?
Just right. I'm going back to the trenches. Left tackle Braxton Jones. I went through and watched the game, and I thought about him for my trench tribute. He just had a nice game again. The bull rush thing is still a work in progress. He had a nice few anchors there. But I saw a couple pancakes from him. He plays a little bit more. I didn't see a lot last year, but he seems he has a little bit more of an edge this year. And some of the times when you do his pancake, you kind of do the sprawl on top of the guy that's on the ground there. I just like Braxton Jones. I like him as a person. I like him as a player. Ryan Poles talked about him because he did, of course, the third quarter. He was the interview on the Fox broadcast. And Ryan Poles talked just about how much he appreciates Jones's his work ethic, how much he gives to the team, and how much he puts in the offseason to kind of become a better football player. So I'm expecting a nice year out of Braxton Jones. Again, the only guy that played every snap last year. He's pretty much the only guy now that's played all preseason. He's healthy. He's available, and that's a big thing for this O-line right now.
I like it. I had him in my notes. I, like you, almost had him as my trench tribute as well. Not the starters weren't in a ton, but I thought he looked good. So I'm glad that you mentioned him there. I could have gone a couple different ways for my just right. I just wanted to mention that I thought the Jack Sanborn play where he tracked down Allen for the sack that didn't count because there was a defensive holding penalty, but it was a really nice play by Jack Sanborn to get down just a very elusive and big athlete in Josh Allen on the run there. And that would have been a sack. Like, that was a very nice play. He just didn't play that. He didn't have the stats necessarily, but Sanborn deserves to at least be mentioned here. I just want to say Cairo Santos. We talked about it last week, but he hit a 50-yarder. They talked a little bit about how, he's been working on his leg strength too. So I don't know what Gil and Cairo Santos did, or what, maybe they've got some kind of supplement that they want to sell for improving their leg strength or something like that. But, both of these guys, I think you would describe them last year as like accurate, but not the biggest leg, right? But I think that's true for both of those guys. If they both have been able to add a little bit of leg strength over the offseason and have more distance to their punts and their field goals, those things matter. Those things do add, those little inches add up over time, right? That's the whole football, philosophy. You got to win the inch here, win the inch there. But these things do add up and they do matter. And I just want to say, I see you, Cairo Santos. Good for you. You had a great preseason. You're strong. There was no threat from the rookie kicker. You held on, and we're happy you're here and healthy.
It's a game of inches, football is, and if you got a kicker and a punter that can kind of get to those extra, those hidden yardage, they say, that's kudos for the team. And Santos, like I said, yeah, he held off the rookie. Was he a rookie? I'm not sure. Andrew Shizmizit.
Yeah, he's a rookie.
His name was. Yeah, he was in camp, and a lot of Bears fans right away were, oh my God, he's taking Santos' job. Get him out of there. He sucks. Santos had missed 3 extra points last year. He's a bum. Santos is fine. He's a good professional quality kicker. He's making some good coin here, but you got to pay those guys if they do the job, and Santos does the job. So kudos to him. And I'm glad you mentioned this has become a special teams podcast. We're all about the little guy here.
Third phase, man.
There it is.
All right. Well, let's. What do you want to talk about before we get out of here? Any odds and ends from the preseason? Anything that you want to talk about going forward as we hit into our regular season schedule?
Yeah, I mean, we're just excited. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. We're gonna debut our official podcast lineup here soon. I'm working on that now. Our official video lineup is in a little different. We're gonna have that debuting here soon. And on a personal note, I'm doing some work with Pro Sports Fans. It's a new app. Sean Salisbury, former NFL quarterback, former ESPN media guy. He's the president of that. I am one of their Bears media casters. There's 6 of us that cover the Bears for that Pro Sports Fans app. Find that on Apple, on Google Play. We're going to be doing some quick hit podcasts through the season. And then the plan is also we're going to be doing like a game cast. So during the game, you can kind of join us on the game. We're going to be talking about the game. And I'm not sure the full details in our full schedule, but it should be fun. So check out that app, Pro Sports Fans app.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we're happy that, again, I'll say it again. We're happy the preseason's over. We're happy that real football is near us. We've got one free weekend left. Those of you that like college football, I'm sure that you'll fill your Labor Day weekend with college football. I'm gonna go touch some grass. I would encourage the rest of you to do so as well, because once we get into the season, it gets much harder to do that, and obviously the grind will start to turn here. So enjoy your last week or two of summer, and thanks for joining us with this one. And until next time, bear down. I do not see a Navy wall behind you, and I do not see anything hung up.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, my wife had some issues pop up. She was all ready. She had the tarp ready to go, and then something popped up here at the family, and I just don't have time, man. It's like my real job takes a lot of time. Obviously, this, I have full-time effort into this. But I do have a feeling at some point I'm gonna have to do it myself, because it's just not getting it done here. So, but it's okay. Then I got 2 weeks, right? Week 1, it'll happen.
I haven't heard anything injuries wise.
Yeah, the Sewell thing. Coach Flus does not have to say an injury report until the Wednesday before Packer week, and he's not going to say anything. We'll find out something when they set the roster, which is Tuesday, 3 p.m. Chicago time. You have to have your 53-man roster set. And then after that, after it's set, now you can take those guys on your 53 and you can put them on IR. So if Sewell makes the roster, And if the injury is significant enough to miss at least 4 weeks, they'll immediately IR him. Sewell's making the roster. I'm sure that's going to happen. Doug Kramer, though, I don't know, man. I wasn't impressed with what I saw in the preseason out of him. But at this point, if he's healthy enough to snap, I think he's going to be there somehow. But cast on the wrist, even Coach Lou said it's not a big deal. They'll get more tests on it, but no, it's a cast, so who knows what's going on there.
I don't know where to go with these comments today, guys. We've got some preseason freakouts here. I don't want to I don't want to live that world too much. This seems like a bit of an exaggeration. Terrell Lewis was Will Anderson before Will Anderson.
I mean, he was a good edge rusher for Bama. I do remember him coming out. I remember I don't do a ton of draft stuff, but he was one of the guys that I thought the Bears may take a flyer on. I think Lewis was a 3rd round pick of the Rams, I want to say, outside linebacker. Will Anderson is a much better prospect than Lewis was, but man, Lewis, he may have found a role. He may have, and then I will say this: I noticed in the game on my rewatch, the Bears dropped Lewis in the coverage on a zone blitz. He was playing left defensive end. As soon as the snap happened, he kind of took the tight end off into the flat while they blitzed both linebackers up the gut. So Lewis has that outside linebacker skill set. So maybe you'll see him every now and again in like a zone blitz setting. And I love the zone blitz. I remember when the Steelers started doing that way back in the day. I just thought it was really unique, really messes with the blocking scheme of an offensive line. If the guy you're expecting who's sitting in front of you all of a sudden drops off the line, you're not expecting that. And then all of a sudden here comes a corner or a linebacker. So if the Bears can incorporate some zone blitz stuff, I'm all for that.
Yeah, well, any kind of looks, right? Particularly as you go against younger guys that haven't seen everything, right? You don't necessarily have a lot of success throwing a zone blitz at Tom Brady because he's seen them all. But you throw it against rookies and younger guys, they can get a little happy feet there. I mean, I don't know about Green. We've talked about him being a roster bubble guy. He might be more of an edge run setting the edge on the run type of guy than maybe his pass rush juice. But Robinson's their guy, right? Like they brought him in. They're not going to cut him quick, and I don't know that I've seen anything pro or minus against him. I'm just going with what we're seeing here, that the tea leaves are that Gibson's not in favor. I think the reality is that he has been able to show out against lesser competition, but I think they were probably pretty disappointed with the many games that he put on film last year where he wasn't able to do much of anything. And so they may have just that may have been the tape that they're reacting off of.
Like I said, if it was me, I'm keeping Gibson. I'm keeping Lewis. In my last, I did a roster projection. I had him keeping 6 defensive ends, because Gibson and Lewis both make the team. I have Green making the team too. Rasheem Green can kick in and play some D tackle for you. So can DeMarcus Walker. Here's the thing to keep in mind with Rasheem Green. He's a veteran, right? The Bears obviously like him. He's been starting for them in preseason. If a veteran is on your roster, a vested vet's on your roster week 1, his salary is guaranteed for the entire season. Every year you see teams, they'll cut veterans week 1 or prior to week 1 to bring them back week 2 because now the salary is not guaranteed. I see Rasheem Green as a candidate for this with the Bears. No one's going to be clamoring to get Rasheem Green on the roster. He's a guy, like I said, that minimum, I think this is 6th or 7th year in the league. He's had some success. He's been in rotations on a few teams now, Seattle, Houston. So he has a place in the league, but I could see the Bears cutting him early, bringing him back for week 2. That way they don't guarantee the full salary. And then as far as Robinson, like JB said, man, that's Proles' guy, man. 5th round draft pick, raw athlete, still learning the position. He has a place in this roster. Plus, he's been starting every week too. I like Gibson. I like Lewis. If they all can develop, that's great. But we'll see what happens on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Chicago time.
And obviously, some of those cuts will start rolling out a little earlier than that. But that's the deadline. You know what, John? The Goldfish they're not gonna remember the insult. They've already forgotten about it.
There it is.
I could name a number of guys that I'm less concerned with. I mean, if we're going to go down that direction, but that's a good. I mean, you shouldn't be concerned necessarily because it is just going to happen, right? So you got to come in with that expectation, just like we hope that you came in with that expectation last year with Gordon. How come centers get hand injuries? I mean, I don't know. Like what I don't know what's happening. Again, I introduced the Mustafa voodoo doll theory last year.
Mustafa, he's the reason.
To me that seemed like the most likely explanation because I'm just joking. Obviously, it's not a likely explanation, but it's just who knows. It's just random. Kramer obviously got hurt early in camp last year and was on IR, and Patrick was hurt early. Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. That was just a weird thing.
Fluke. It's got to be fluky. I mean, something's going on, but it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
Did you want to address the Nate Davis thing because it was popped up in the thing here? That was odd.
Well, that was the one where I was like,
it was a really strange. That was a strange Twitter thread that someone put out there. It was
that was like fan fiction, right?
Yeah, it was a big account, obviously, but they're not. Of course, the blue check on Twitter world doesn't really mean much these days, but it's they've broken a few things, but it's hard to tell if a site like this is breaking news stories or they're just guessing correctly. And then they're bragging about it later because if they have like a lot of stuff, here's all the stories we broke through the years, they brag about it. Well, I mean, I could do the same thing. I could just throw out some bullshit and I was right about this one. So who knows with the Nate Davis story? There may be some truth there where he kind of came in and he wasn't sure what the team expected of him. Maybe there's a disconnect between Poles and Coach Flus because don't bring a guy in that doesn't hit the Hits philosophy, or maybe he thought he was Hits philosophy and he just wasn't. But he's ramping up. The soft tissues, that's league wide. I mean, look around the NFL. Players are bigger, stronger, faster. This is what happens. Those happen all around the league. But as far as losing the locker room, I don't see it. This team is who it is. They're in a rebuild coming off a 3-win team. That team plays hard. It's just a matter of now let's build on it and see what happens. If they're a 3-win team this year, then maybe something's going on there. Maybe they're making a change, but at this point, I can't see that happening.
Yeah, I think there's got to be some kind of analogy that I can't quite nail. I need like a car guy to help me out with this one, but like over the years, as these athletes become like higher and higher performance, they're like these high-end sports cars. And so like one little thing gets off, right? And you got to send it to the shop, or you got to constantly, take them in for tune-ups and stuff because these guys are just at this peak level and they're just trying to get that like 99th to 100%. Like they just are always at the peak level, right? Whereas before they were just a little bit more, you're everybody's banged up, but you're a little more sturdy maybe, but you're not trying to reach that. I'm trying to be the fastest I can be every week. And I'm trying, there's something there, but the soft tissue thing, it's everywhere, right? And it's just because of where these athletes are at and they're ramping up into this game shape. And so you do see it league wide. And I think in my opinion, Twitter and some of the other conversations that we have, they're so freaked out about participation in practices and why are these guys missing and what, and yes, practice helps with gelling and that's important, but let's not freak out until we see the week 1 injury report. Let's not freak out until we see who's not playing in the game because of injury and, how that's impacting the team. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show on my way back, and Robert Mays was talking about being at camp and talking to different coaches around the league and just how much they all say the same thing. We don't really know what our team is until October. These guys are still they're figuring things out through September. So you can't even really you shouldn't freak out in the Packers game. You shouldn't freak out, in week 2 against the Bucs. You shouldn't freak out week 3 against the Chiefs, right? Because these teams are all trying to figure themselves out. They look like a disaster show, then okay, yeah, we'll address it. But like for the most part, like don't freak out yet. Like there's still a ton of information that we don't have. We won't know. No one knows until we actually get into these games. So I just don't worry about the practice stuff. Like let's just wait.
I want to hit this one here. Can't think of another example of kicker or punter getting proven in leg strength. I mean, we're Bears fans, so we should remember a guy by the name of Robbie Gould. Early in his
100%.
career, they didn't even let him try field goals 50 yards or plus. I'm looking at now his first 4 years in the league, he only had 2 field goal attempts over 50 yards. See, he missed them both. But towards his career went on, I mean, he ended up, getting a lot more chances there. At 1 year in 2015, he was 7 or 9 from 50 yards plus. He was 6 for 6 in 2011. So here's a guy that, as Bears fans, we should remember he improved his leg strength. I mean, he put the work in, and and now Robbie Gould is now at 41 years old. I think he's unemployed, but I think he's staying red, and I think the Niners may give him a call because they're having some problems there right now with their kicking game.
I don't know, man. I think that this stuff happens quite frequently. I mean, some of these guys come in and they're finished products, but it's just like any other position.
It's the professional strength and conditioning program. Plus, if that's why a lot of these guys, when they come out of college, they don't get jobs right away. You're always hearing of guys that come into the league and they've been bouncing around a couple years trying to do stuff, and then finally they latch on a team 3 years out of college. That's because now they have a chance to specifically hone in on what they have to hone in on, and a lot of it is leg strength. And a lot of these guys come out are accurate. And or vice versa. Some guys come out with booming legs, but they are not accurate, and then
spraying it everywhere.
And then that's what they do in their time off. They work on their accuracy, and that's why these guys, as they fine tune their technique, they get gigs later in their career.
I think that was Piñeiro's deal, right? Like Piñeiro's got a pretty good leg, but he was really inaccurate. And so, but now you look at Piñeiro, who the Bears had in, obviously, and then he got
he's
injured.
Still in the league somewhere, isn't he? I think I saw him.
Yeah, but
around.
And he's done well, right? Like, so some of these guys just takes time. This is a nice callback. I hope so, because there's way too many gold bricks in that visual. So we need to make sure we're bringing the Navy bricks in. I think we've talked about this one before. Like, give us a couple months to to tell what his play calling is. Same show I was listening to this weekend or on the drive back this morning, talking about play calling and talking about play install and how offensive systems work. And I know I've talked about this so much, but that they're talking, they don't disclose who they're necessarily talking to in coaches, but they're just saying this is a coach from like a really good offense, and they were talking about how they installed a running play, but they installed a running play only after they knew that they would install 3 play action fakes off of that, and they would and like there was just this like, this is how we fit this into the ecosystem so that we know how to run this with different looks and run play action off of this. And I was just like, this is what I'm saying with the last regime, where it was a collection of plays. We're throwing plays together, and there were warning signs that I really latched onto, where Nagy fired the offensive line coach because they were responsible for the run game. I was like, whoa, what? Like, you're the offensive guy. Like, every piece of this needs to fit together. And so Getsy has that background where I think he understands that all of this fits together. And I think he was able to show a change in his philosophy around the skill sets of Justin Fields last year and the pieces that he had around him to have a presentable offense. The record wasn't great last year, but that offense was presentable to the league in large part because Getsy found a different way to use the pieces that he had. That's a big plus for him in my book. So I don't have enough data yet. I don't have to make that decision yet, but to me, he showed some good things last year that give me confidence this year.
I have seen a lot of angst over Luke Getsy this offseason, more than last year. It's funny because last offseason, when the Bears, signed him to run the offense, a lot of Bears fans, oh my God, we're going to lose Getsy in a year. He's going to be so great. He's going to be a head coach somewhere. Now the Bears are back to square one with their offense again. And we're like, oh, let's kind of let it play out, see what happens. And now this offseason, Bears won 3 games. Now fans they kind of flipped. They're like, oh my God, is he any good? Is he a good play caller? Is his scheme okay? Can he design? We hear a lot about people say they want more creativity. I don't care about creativity. I want things to like you said. I want plays to marry with each other. So if I run this play, you don't know if it's this play or the fake off of it or the play action pass or a roll to the right, or roll to the left. There's so many variations you can do, because of the Shanahan-esque scheme. So let's see how Getsy does this season. I have high hopes from the league. The league has high hopes on him too, because he coached the Senior Bowl. He was the head coach for I forget, North or South, whichever he was, the whatever team Tyson Bagent was on. That's the team he coached. So the league's high on him overall. The Bears obviously are high on him overall. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, that was fun. He's going to be gone a year. No,
I don't think so.
I mean, okay, we'll see. This last one I think we'll hit up. Poles tried really hard to improve the roster. Do you agree? I mean, you hope LG, all 32 GMs are trying to do some variation of that, or they're trying to set themselves up for future success by trying to do the tear down thing, which I think was what Poles did last year. I think that he more like, did he accomplish that? I think that what I like about it was that he didn't push it all in and go and get nervous, right? Like, I think the pinch points of the offseason were probably the Mike McGlinchey free agency talk. Again, none of this is official, but like there's a lot of smoke and a lot of behind the scenes stuff that Bears were leader in the clubhouse on Mike McGlinchey. And it didn't happen because Denver came over the top and gave him a Godfather offer. Okay, you can't refuse that. He's going to go play in Denver. Poles can come back and say, oh yeah, add 250,000 to that number and we'll do it. Right. He didn't. He's like, no, what? That's too rich for me. I've got to pull back, and I'll have to change tactics here. And so I do appreciate that he has his limits that he's not willing to go beyond, because he could have done the thing where he just spends all the money, and that shows some desperation. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see the Bears make a move still, like with draft capital, to trade next year's draft capital to somebody that can help this year. We know people that are maybe fine with trading for somebody like a Chris Jones, who great player, wants a new contract, wants to be the highest paid defensive tackle in the league. I'm someone who doesn't necessarily think that's a good idea. I would like to keep that draft capital intact as much as possible, because this rebuild should be for the long haul, not for 2023. And so as much as a guy like Chris Jones could help this year, he might not be on the right timeline for what this Bears team is. And so I think it's actually, sometimes it's harder to sit on your hands. And so I appreciate him being able to do that. What about you? What's your overall thought on how this has played out? I mean, besides, I would have got a center. Yeah. Okay. But like, other than a couple, whatever things like that, I'm okay with the overall philosophy.
The Chris Jones things, I think you nailed it, saying the timeline is not right. I mean, if this team was another year into the rebuild, then I think you pull the trigger and make a move, because then you think Chris Jones is a piece that can come in and help put you over the top. But I don't think this team's expecting to be in the Super Bowl. I mean, yeah, they want to be, but I don't think it's going to happen there. And it's got to be hard for Ryan Poles, because I'm sure he knows Chris Jones. I mean, he was in KC for a while with him. The same time he was there, he may have been involved in scouting him at some point when he was there. So I'm sure as a GM, he's thinking, man, that's one of my guys. I know him well. I'd love to have him in Chicago. But the timeline's not right. Our team's not ready to do the move like this quite yet. Next year, though, maybe. And then, of course, the Jonathan Taylor stuff, a lot of those rumors popped up. And then, it got kind of shot down today. Adam Schefter, I think, said, the Bears are not involved in that at all. So, I think it's been a good overall move. I had some questions about his last year's moves. This year, I'm with you. The only one's the center, but from a team building standpoint, they figure, we got a veteran white hair. We're going to have a young O-line around him. I want a veteran center. I don't want a rookie center here with this team right now. I got a young quarterback still. I want a veteran. Health's always going to be a question, especially with the guy at 30 years old now. His backups, Lucas Patrick, had a lot of injuries last year. The Bears obviously sent him to a nice contract. They feel he's part of the O-line core. So you got Whitehair, you got Patrick. You figure you're fine. One of those guys will be your center. They're both hurt. What can you do? Doug Kramer, okay, that's their draft pick. He's hurt. what are you going to do? Dieter Iceland is a Ryan Pace holdover. He's your guy right now. So that's why I think a center move is coming, unless the injury to Whitehair is fine. And like I said, he played left guard, so he's healthy enough to play, just not healthy enough to get a good handle on the ball when he snaps. So maybe by the time Packer Week rolls around, the official Packer Week, he'll be good to go.
Let's hope so. A hand injury with Whitehair's inconsistent history with snapping and shotgun will definitely be a focus for people. So you're like, I don't want to hear the snap thing again. I love it. I love it. I knew it right when I said it. I was like, he's not gonna like this.
That's all right. He's fine. He'll be good.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your 3-day weekend next week in whatever shape that takes. And we'll be back Monday after the Packers game, 6:00 Central Time. And we will now be on the weekly cadence of
the game. Yep.
After every game, we'll come to you. A little bit of travel for me in October, but like we'll still try to keep the cadence. That may move a little bit, but overall, we're in it now. It's a real deal. So
nice. I'm ready.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.